The morning sun filtered through the gauzy curtains of our new bedroom, casting a warm golden glow across the room. Emily and I, newly married and freshly moved in, were still nestled under the covers, the outside world a distant thought. This old Victorian house, a wedding gift from her aunt, was our new beginning, and each day felt like a continuation of our honeymoon, filled with discovery and gentle laughter. Our daily routine had quickly taken on a pleasant, predictable rhythm. I would wake up first, drawn by the allure of the quiet house, and make coffee. The aroma filled the kitchen, mingling with the old wood and the faint, musty scent that comes with historic homes. Emily would join me soon after, her hair tousled from sleep, her smile bright and eager as she reached for her cup. Imagine all the people who've had breakfast in this kitchen over the years, she'd muse, her voice filled with wonder. We'd sit at the old oak table, the morning light illuminating the fine lines of her face, talking about everything and nothing, plans for the garden, the peculiar charm of the creaky floorboards, the way the wind seemed to whisper through the eaves at night. The house, with its sprawling layout and endless rooms, invited exploration. We spent hours wandering through its corridors and chambers, each filled with relics of its past lives, faded photographs, ornate furniture, heavy drapes that spilled onto the floor. Emily loved the attic most, with its dusty trunks and forgotten books. "It's like a treasure chest," she exclaimed one afternoon, pulling out a delicate lace dress and holding it against herself, her laughter echoing off the rafters. In the evenings, we'd retire to the living room, where I'd stoke the fireplace while Emily put on some music. The crackle of the fire, the soft melodies floating through the air, and the comfortable silence between us knit together into a tapestry of contentment. Sometimes we'd dance, her head resting against my chest, our feet barely moving, completely at ease in our shared solitude. Our neighbors, curious about the new occupants of the old Henderson place, would occasionally stop by with baked goods and friendly advice on living with the quirks of an old home. "You'll hear all sorts of noises," Mr. Jenkins, the elderly gentleman from next door, warned us with a wink. "Old houses like to talk, especially at night." As the days passed, the novelty of our new life didn't wear off. It settled into a deep, fulfilling peace. We were building something beautiful, not just in the walls and gardens of our home, but in the quiet moments we shared, the simple pleasures of a life intertwined. Little did we know, the real adventure was just about to begin. Life in our Victorian home unfolded with a rhythm as comforting as it was enchanting. As autumn deepened, bringing with it a chill that crept through the thick walls, Emily and I found ourselves more attuned to the quirks of our abode. The house, with all its grandeur and mystery, seemed to embrace us tighter, its shadows lengthening in the corners of our vision. One evening, as we prepared dinner, a sharp sulphurous smell wafted through the kitchen. It was sudden and unwelcome, a stark contrast to the aroma of the herbs we were chopping. "Probably just some old pipes," I suggested, though the plumbing had given us no trouble before. Emily nodded, a slight furrow in her brow, her sensitivity to our home's atmosphere more acute than mine. The chill was next. It began subtly, a coolness that seemed to seep out of the very walls as night fell. At first, we thought little of it, bundling up in sweaters and socks, joking about the draftiness of old houses. But as the days passed, the cold grew more pronounced, especially in the hallway that ran like a stone spine down the center of the house. It was an unnatural, clinging cold, one that made you shiver even under layers of clothing. Then the scratching started. It was faint at first, like the scuttling of mice in the walls. We'd hear it at night, lying in bed in the dark, the sound skittering along the edges of our consciousness. "It's just the house settling," Emily tried to reassure me, though her voice held a note of uncertainty. But night after night, the sound grew louder, more insistent, a rasping, dragging noise that seemed to be coming from the hallway. Curiosity and a touch of fear drove us to investigate one night. Armed with a flashlight, we crept through the dark house, the beam of light flickering off the old portraits that lined the walls. The scratching grew louder as we approached the source, a certain part of the hallway where the air felt even colder, the smell of sulfur stronger. It was there we found it, Not the source of the scratching, but something altogether more unsettling. A door. It stood at the end of the hallway, where there had been nothing before. A plain wooden door, its surface rough and unadorned, utterly out of place against the elaborate decor of the rest of the house. It was inexplicable, impossible, and yet undeniably real. Was this here when we moved in? Emily's voice was a whisper, barely audible over the thumping of our hearts. I shook my head, my mind racing with impossible scenarios. We reached out together, hands trembling, to touch the cold, rough wood, half expecting it to vanish beneath our fingertips. But it was solid, ominously so. We tried the handle, but it was locked, unyielding. As we stood there, the scratching ceased abruptly, replaced by a deep, resonant growl that seemed to come from behind the door. We fled back to our room, the door remaining closed, a silent sentinel in the dark. After discovering the mysterious door, the atmosphere in our home shifted. Days were still filled with sunlight and the remnants of our initial delight, but nights became a canvas for darker, unspoken fears. Emily and I would exchange glances when the clock neared dusk, each dreading the long hours until morning. Our initial attempts to ignore the door proved futile. The curiosity, and yes, fear, gnawed at us with sharp teeth. Each evening, as shadows lengthened and the air turned frigid, we found ourselves drawn back to the hallway. The door remained stubbornly real and closed during the day. However, as we soon discovered, its rules changed under the cloak of night. The first time we opened it was just past midnight. The house was silent, save for our synchronized breathing and the distant, mournful call of an owl. The door's cold handle turned with an eerie ease in my grip, revealing not another room, but a long, dark corridor that hadn't been there before. It stretched ahead, the walls narrowing into a point where a faintly glowing red door stood, disturbingly conspicuous against the engulfing darkness. Each subsequent night, as if compelled by a force beyond our understanding, we checked the door. With a mixture of horror and fascination, we noted that the black corridor seemed to shrink incrementally, bringing the red door closer to our world. The growls that once sporadically echoed from behind the initial door now became a nightly occurrence, low and menacing, a sound no earthly creature could make. The tension between Emily and I grew taut. Conversations about the door dominated our days. "What do you think it wants?" Emily asked one morning, her eyes shadowed by sleepless nights. "I don't know," I admitted, "but it feels like it's coming for us." The idea of leaving the house arose, yet we were both reluctant to abandon our home, hopelessly hoping to find another solution. One night, driven by desperation, I suggested we try to reach the red door before it reached us. Armed with nothing but flashlights and an old iron key, the one Emily had found in the garden, we ventured into the black corridor. The air was thick, almost tangible, pressing against us as we walked. The growling grew louder, more urgent as we approached the red door. It was a vivid, pulsating red, like the color of blood under a full moon. Before we could touch it, the growling crescendoed into a deafening roar. We froze, the sound vibrating through our bones. Then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The silence that followed was oppressive. When we finally dared to move forward again, the door swung open on its own, revealing nothing but an impenetrable darkness that seemed to pulsate with a life of its own. Terrified yet unable to turn away, we stood at the threshold, peering into the abyss. It felt like the darkness was looking right back, seeing into the deepest parts of us. The door behind us began to close slowly, as if giving us a final chance to decide our fate. The decision to step through the red door was not one we took lightly. Hand in hand, Emily and I crossed into the unknown, each step heavy with the weight of our uncertain future. Behind us, the door to our hallway clicked shut, sealing us in this new darkness that enveloped us like a thick, suffocating blanket. Inside, the darkness was not merely an absence of light, but seemed a living entity, swirling around us, brushing against our skin with what felt like whispers made of shadow. The air was thick, charged with a static energy that made every hair stand on end. The growling that had tormented us night after night was no longer just a sound, but a very real presence, moving around us in the dark. We moved cautiously, the faint glow from the now distant red door our only guide back. As we advanced, the corridor seemed to contract rhythmically, as if breathing. The walls, which at first appeared smooth, now felt lined with what seemed like runes, pulsating softly under our trembling fingers. The growls turned into a cacophony of whispers, voices that were almost human, filled with pain and anger. Emily, what if... My voice broke, the fear finally bubbling over, but she squeezed my hand tighter, her resolve a beacon in the darkness. We can't go back now. We have to find a way to end this, she said, her voice a mix of determination and dread. Finally, the corridor opened into a vast chamber. In its center, suspended in the air, was a heart, massive and beating, encased in what looked like a cage of bones. The growling emanated from it, each beat a wave of sound that shook the ground. The realization hit us hard. The heart was the source of the corridor, the door, the darkness. It was alive, and it was suffering. With little discussion, for there was none needed, we knew what we had to do. The old iron key Emily had found, now glowing faintly in her hand, seemed to beckon us forward. As we approached the heart, the cage opened as if inviting us. Placing the key near the heart, we watched as it began to dissolve into a brilliant light, seeping into the heart, mending the fissures that marred its surface. The transformation unfolded with a breathtaking immediacy. The chamber, once shrouded in oppressive darkness, ignited with a burgeoning glow, the shadows retreating as if chased by the morning sun. The heart, a sinister source of our fears, began to beat more slowly, its harsh growls diminishing into gentle, sighing murmurs of relief. Light filled every corner, cascading over us, washing away the layers of dread and despair that had clung to our spirits. As the heart mended, the very fabric of the chamber seemed to unravel, dissolving into nothingness around us. We were abruptly standing back in our hallway, bathed in sunlight so pure and brilliant, it felt as though the night had never dared to touch our world. The door that had brought us to this brink had vanished, erased from existence, leaving no hint of the darkness it had once shielded. Emily and I embraced tightly, our bodies heavy with the relief and exhaustion of our ordeal. The house itself felt transformed, suffused with a new lightness, as though it too had been liberated from a profound, lingering torment. We understood in that moment that our lives were irrevocably altered, marked forever by the memory of the red door and the living heart, a stark reminder of the darkness that dwells just out of sight and the luminous potential of hope to vanquish it. In the tranquil days that followed, our conversation rarely revisited the events of that night. The whole experience seemed too ethereal, too distant from the tangible world we knew. Yet, the pervasive sense of peace that had settled over our home served as a constant, soothing balm, affirming that the nightmare had truly ended. We had confronted our deepest fears, ventured through a portal meant to remain sealed, and emerged not just intact, but fortified. As we pieced our lives back together, the lessons we learned in the shadowy depths, the courage summoned, the love affirmed, the enduring promise of light even in the darkest corridors, guided us forward. These truths became the bedrock of our renewed existence, a foundation of bravery, love, and illumination, charting a path through any darkness we might yet face.